YouTube, what's going on? I'm going to try and do this video as fast as I can. There's quite a few cars I'm going to show. I have more of these than I thought. And I've been very critical of this brand, but I do occasionally buy them, and then, over time they tend to add up. So this one had a major lean to it when I bought it, but I took the base off and just put it back on. And it still might have a little bit of lean, but it's way better than it was. That's actually a pretty sweet ride. I wish they would have done this deco with the auto driver tooling, though. I'd like it more. But this one surprisingly has transparent lens taillights, which M2 seems to have gotten away from. Even with castings where they used to have lens headlights and taillights, they're going to the foil, the chrome headlights and taillights, and painted chrome. So, but on this one, they actually kept the lens taillights, and I love this. I'm not big on too many separate pieces, but that separate piece gas cap is pretty sick, although it's way out of scale. Pretty awesome looking, and I do like this car. So we'll start with that one. This is going to be, man, there's a lot of cars. I'm just going to try to do it. Let's see, that's Mopar. Let's do a Volkswagen next. This is the M2 Volkswagen Beetle, and I actually do like the M2 better than the green light. I just think it looks better, it's cleaner, got a better stance, it's got lens headlights and taillights. This one here even has lens indicators up on the fenders. They don't do that on all of them, but this particular release has them. It's got that dark tan interior, the Volkswagen rocker panel. Here's your lens taillight detail. (1967). Opening bonnet, opening trunk. So that's pretty awesome. It's a really nice roller. All of these are nice rollers. There are going to be a couple exceptions to that, which I'll explain. There's another Volkswagen. And this one is sweet too. I mean, this is the type of M2 stuff that I buy. The ones that are like really eye-catchy. And it's crazy, like I talked about in my video from last night. When I started collecting, M2 was like the biggest premium brand as far as American brands go. Round 2 had not relaunched Johnny Lightning. Green Light was still quite hadn't hit their stride. They were popular and they were my favorite, but M2 was the brand at that time. Auto World was nothing when I started collecting. Like, you couldn't give away an Ultra Red. And that was just 4 short years ago. But things have really changed. M2 are really starting to sit there on the shelves at my local Walmarts, and I'm in a pretty competitive market. So I don't know what the deal is with that. I don't know. I think M2's really just developed a reputation for themselves. I think that has a lot to do with it. When you combine that with, how much Greenlight has stepped up their game, I think a lot of people have shifted allegiance. M2's chase program sucks. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And the chase cars that they do make they're never good. It's very rare where I see one and I'm like, oh, that thing is awesome. Now, I know that's subjective, but I don't know. Their chase cars aren't rare. Their ultra chases are. They produce more ultra chases than Auto World produces ultra reds, or Greenlight produces green machines, with the exception of their 10,000 unit runs that they've been doing a lot of lately. All right, so now we're gonna get into some American brands. I'll start with this 1954 Chevy Bel Air. I love this casting. Johnny Lightning did this car, I think, but it's way small for scale. This one is probably a little big for scale. And as I prepped for this video, one thing I noticed, M2s are probably the heaviest cars that I have. There's a lot of weight to these cars. But they're also very delicate. Just handling them, like you'll feel bumpers shift, you'll feel little chrome inserts shift a little bit. Now this one, unfortunately, they don't do in the auto driver line. I don't even think they do the 55. They do the 57 in the auto driver. And as I've said on my channel many times, I prefer the auto driver because it doesn't have the opening doors. But this is also probably a 4 or 5 year old release, and their build quality back then was much better than what it is today. So that's a really cool looking 54 Chevy. I also have, I didn't dust this one off, but here's the 55. This is also an older release, although it's not as old as the 54, I don't think. But even this one, only three of the four tires had the white wall. And typically when that happens, it's just that the tire was put on backwards. But the fourth tire didn't even have the white wall on the back side of it. So I just flipped them around. I'm not a big fan of white wall tires, but on this particular car, I probably would have preferred it. This is a sick car as well, though. And this is M2's forte, in my opinion. This is right in their wheelhouse, these cars from the 1950s. I mean, if you look at this, really nice lensed headlight detail. I mean, the hood ornaments are pretty impressive. Yes, you have to be careful with them, but I don't think anyone else has ever done hood ornaments like this. I think Johnny Lightning has done a few where they've been part of the mold, but when you do it that way, they are far less detailed. So, I mean, as critical as I am to this brand, I do have a certain level of appreciation and respect for what they do. So that's the 55. I don't have a 57, but I do have a 58. This, in my opinion, is the nicest. It's the nicest 58 Impala in the scale. I think Revell might have done it though, and I don't have that one. But this is definitely nicer than the Johnny Lightning. No question about that. And this is also an older cast line release. So M2 is similar to Greenlight in that the further back you go, the better the build quality tends to be. and it's noticeably better. Like, it's not just a little bit better, it's significantly better. That is a sick looking car. Man, it looks great on camera. Never been a big fan of this color. But even the dash, look at the dash. I mean, that's a lot of detail that you don't typically see on 1 to 64 scale. Granted, this is probably going to be closer to 1 to 60. But very nice. That 58 Impala. Is very nice. And then this one here, this is a 58 Chevy Cameo. I just showed this one, I think, not too long ago. And there's one of the reasons I'm not a fan of these opening doors, because that's a very common thing with M2. And I know, like, the M2 diehards will say, well, just take it apart and adjust it. And it's just not always that easy. So, I mean, think about how much better this thing would look without the articulating doors. It would look significantly better. But it's still an awesome looking truck. The driver's side looks great. Taillights look great. I love this trim paneling along the bed. That's all separate piece. Not part of the casting. It's just sick. I wish they would have done lens headlights, but that's okay. Really nice truck overall. Okay, that's Chevy. I do have a couple of General Motors releases. Like, I have this 1950 Oldsmobile. I love this one. This is sick. This is one of my favorite police cars. Now, the two that I showed in last night's video, the 57 Panel and the 55 Star Chief, I'm not going to show. This one, Futuramic. You can see here another generic police livery, but it's the black and white theme, kind of like the CHP, which is a great look for a police car, especially if you're going to do a generic deco. But the detail on this car is ridiculous as well, even though those taillights are painted. The gumball on top is just painted, that's not lensed, but it looks really good. The siren looks amazing. You just got to be real careful with these when you open them up. Lensed headlights, they're just great. This is what M2 does best. No one else even comes close. Greenlight and Auto World aren't competing, so really it's just Johnny Lightning and Racing Champs that have dabbled into these older. Revell, I don't think, did anything this old. They might have done a few. And same thing with Ertl. But M2 really does a great job with cars from the 1950s. So there is that 1950 Oldsmobile. Here is a 1954 Dodge Coronet. I should have done this after the Daytona. But another great looking car from the 1950s. Again, there's a ton of detail in the interior that is really dark in there, so it's hard to get it to show through. But this is the type of M2 that I would buy from time to time. These 1950s models. Because there's no better brand to get these type of replicas from. Okay, from there, I think we are almost into the 60s. Guess this would be the last. This is a 1954 Mercury Sun Valley. And this is an interesting car. Got the big old sunroof. Sure, back in those days it was not called a sunroof. Maybe it was, I don't know. I wasn't around when this car came out. My mom hadn't been born yet. My dad was 2. You can see an issue there. That's one of the things that bugs me about M2. It's very uncommon to have issues with articulating hoods. It's very common to have issues with doors. You don't see hoods very often. That is a big issue. But with the car being black, it's hard to notice, and to the naked eye, you can't even tell. So, but this car looks great, mainly because it's black, and that's an issue there, obviously, as well. That's as closed as that door will get without taking it apart. So the typical issues, but otherwise, a really cool looking vintage Mercury. Oh, I did miss General Motors here. This is a 1959 Cadillac. This is one of the earliest M2 cars I ever purchased, and I've had it since it came out. Does have an opening hood. Much better build quality. Back in 2015, I think, is when this one came out. A sweet looking Cadillac. I mean, I could never part with this one. That's why all the M2 cars that I've bought and sold over the course of the last couple years, this one has always stayed on display. And probably always will. I don't think I'll ever part with this one. Very awesome looking Cadillac. All of these roll really nice too. Okay, so with that, I can get into the 1960s and I can get into the Auto Japan stuff. So this one here is a 1965 Ford Econoline. Now this one came in an auto lift kit, or an auto lift set. It was a two van set. Both vans came with the lowered base. I did a base swap on this because I wanted a civilian deco, a nice civilian deco without the lowered base. Just a stock, really a stock look. This is close to a stock look. It's not quite a stock look. Those wheels would be aftermarket. But I think it's a really cool looking van. It's actually one of my favorite vans in my collection as far as premium detailed stuff goes. It's a pretty basic casting. There's nice detail, but they didn't do lens headlights or tail lights. They just did the chrome on the front, and then they painted the back, which I'm okay with. It's nice enough. I don't think anyone else does these vans, so that also adds to their cool factor. I don't think Johnny did an Econoline. And then this one here, this is probably everyone's favorite. I get so much, like, a lot of compliments, a lot of like, are you trading that? Are you selling that? I get a lot of that with this truck. Always seems to generate some good buzz. Now this truck, when it came out, it did, this is not how it was released. It was released on a two-wheel drive base, which sat much lower. It did not have these wheels on it. It didn't look anything like this, really, other than the colors. And it definitely looks way better with the lift. But it's a cool tooling. It's a nice tooling. I hate the opening doors, as I've said a million times. But other than that, it's really well done. You do get lens headlights on this one. Got an opening hood. Some nice engine detail, radiator. It's just those damn doors that they M2 cannot for the life of them figure out how to do them right. That is a sick looking truck though. So if I could if I had to give up my entire M2 collection, but I could only keep two, I would keep this truck and I would keep this Skyline. These are the two that I would keep. That's going to segue us into the Auto Japan. I'm not going to show this because I just showed it in the Porsche video, but this right here, easily my favorite Hako that M2 has done. I put the gray interior in it, and I'm kind of wondering, should go back to the black interior on this one. The black interior kind of makes the car pop a little bit more. Now keep in mind, so like the F100, I base swapped it to give it the lift, and then I tire swapped it to give it the Goodyears. This Hakoska, I totally weathered it. I did a bunch of stuff to that. Most of these, the Econoline van, I did a base swap to give it the stock ride height. And almost all of these Auto Japan cars I have altered. So I'll start with this Hakoska Skyline. I wheel swapped this. They are M2 Auto Japan wheels. I think they came with the orange and white 240Z. But I need to find some shorter axles. These axles are too wide. So there's that. This one here. I don't remember what I did with this one. I think I put a lowered base on it and then painted the wheels. It's not a good roller. I don't know why. It should be because it's a Datsun 510 base that I put on it. So it shouldn't affect it at all. But the early ones, there were some alterations that they made to the interior because it was inhibiting the rear wheels. So it might be that this is an earlier interior, and that plastic is still in the way, which is causing it to log jam. So there's that. This one here is just a real nice base stock model. Only thing I did to this is I chromed the fender mounted side view mirrors, and I chromed the wheels. That's one thing with these M2 Datsuns. 95% of all of the Auto Japan cars that they've released have had black wheels. And I'm just not a fan of that. So this one here is probably one of the most obvious changes that I've made. But look how sick that thing looks, though. This would not look that good with black wheels. So on this one, I did a base swap and I painted the wheels. This casting came with a lowered base. I can't stand the way this car looks with that lowered base. I think it looks absolutely awful. But it's definitely a nice tooling. The tooling itself is actually really nice. Much nicer than what we got from Greenlight. And with a few simple altercations, like just changing the bases around and painting wheels and stuff like that, you can get much better looking results. I thought I grabbed the white 240. I guess I didn't. A couple cars that I didn't make any alterations to. This Advan, this is a Miho exclusive. It's a nice roller, looks really good. Although it has a whole bunch of lean to it. Whole bunch of gangster lean. And that was an issue with this tooling. It's not something you can fix by just messing around with the base. The little post that goes into the back here that holds the back part of the base down, the hole was drilled at an angle, and that's what causes that. So you have to go in there with a really small file or maybe a Dremel and file it straight. And if you do that, then you can get rid of this gangster lean. But it's a production issue, so the entire production run is going to have this issue. It's not going to be it's not going to be partial to certain cars. Every single one of these has that issue. This was the first 510 release. This is the Safari replica, Safari rally car. And I think it's a really nice job. I think at this time, M2 kind of rushed to get them out. They didn't really fine tune everything, and but I think that made for some nicer looking cars, because I think some of the nicest Auto Japan cars were from this first release. But when these 6 cars came out, they did not have lowered bases. In fact, it was the height of this car right here that collectors made a fuss about. And that's when Greenlight, or not Greenlight, but that's when M2 made the lowered base. At least I believe that's how the story went. I could be wrong. I'm not always right. But I do like this Datsun 510. These are very well scaled. They're very well proportioned. And sometimes, like you see here, they're very well executed. Greenlight just did this with their 510. They did it as a Bishop exclusive, so good luck finding it. Those are all Indonesian exclusives. But here you can see the 510 with the lowered base and the stock base. I don't mind the 510 with the lowered base. I don't think it looks bad. It's just the 240 that I can't stand. It looks awful. The 510 lowered bass looks good, and even the Hako lowered bass I think looks pretty good. But on all of the cars, I would prefer the standard ride height, except maybe the 510. I think on the 510 I might prefer the lowered bass. I think that's it, really. One more. Gosh, I don't think I've looked at this one since I bought it. Since the day I bought it, I did a video. And I like this car a lot. But it is not my favorite M2 Hako. Damn, it does look good, though. It looks great on camera. It's that color. I would like to see M2 do more of these types of colors. More of these metallic type colors. I can't think of another M2 car that has this type of paint on it that is not like a SEMA exclusive or something like that. But so anyways, that's not all of my M2 collection, but that is the bulk of it. And these cars should give you a general idea of the type of stuff that I like to collect. Because I will not buy... I think I might buy one M2 car out of every 3 releases that they come out with. And then there are some releases where I'll buy a couple. But then there are some releases where I won't buy any. Pretty much all of the Auto Japan releases I'll grab whenever I can. There was a point where I had all of the Auto Japan cars except for the red 240Z. But I like the Hakos so much. I've got multiples of a bunch of them. I have a couple here that I haven't opened yet. I have 3 or 4 of the blue one, which is that weathered one back there. This is what it looks like when you get it. And then I have another red one like this that I chromed the wheels on, and it looks great. So I like getting them for that purpose. So we're at 33 minutes. I'll just do a once over on all these, and then we'll wrap up the video. But this is a rare M2 video on my channel. And it's not just all Auto Japan. So I wouldn't say M2 is a great brand to collect, like I say with a lot of other stuff. I will say, if your favorite thing to collect is American cars from the 1950s, then M2 is definitely going to be the best brand to collect. But from time to time, they do put out nice stuff, and I find it worth purchasing. And it's really odd, but for some reason, the fact that you can kind of customize a lot of their cars while still using M2 parts. Like this base swap and tire swap is all M2. Because M2, unlike Auto World and Greenlight and Johnny Lightning and every other brand, they screw their bases down. They don't spin them. I don't want to say rivet. Bases are not riveted to cars. They're spun. They're mushroomed. And M2 doesn't do that. They just screw them on with little Phillips screws. So it makes customizing very easy to do. All right, everyone. Well, that's going to do it for me for the weekend. You guys have a good Monday. Have a good week. And I'll holler at you all at the next diecast video.